Apple, just, what are you doing? Do you ever want to listen to us? Sometimes we might have good ideas. For whatever reason, Apple is updating the iPad mini this year, but it's not the way we wanted, and how conveniently timed. Let's begin. Alright, so yeah, just a few days ago, I uploaded my video talking about why I'm excited for the iPad mini 6th generation, and it actually sounds interesting, and I essentially thought it was going to be like an iPad Air 4, but smaller, with like an 8.5-inch display. And now the latest reports from, once again, Mac Takara, really hoping he's wrong on this one, but still, nonetheless, he's a somewhat reliable leaker. He's saying Apple is releasing an 8.5-inch iPad mini in March of this year, but it's still gonna have a home button, a forehead, and a chin, and it just means that it's gonna sit in the same footprint as the last iPad mini, but with thinner side bezels. Oh god. Why? This, I have so much confusion surrounding. So much of this doesn't make sense to me. I mean, for one, I don't even know how much thinner those side bezels can get, and they can retain the same footprint, so it's also possible that, similar to the iPad Air 3 or the iPad 7 versus iPad 6, they might increase the footprint of the iPad just a little bit, so you have to get all new accessories and your old iPad mini covers won't work, in order to accompany this 8.4-inch display, which making the iPad mini bigger just doesn't make sense to me. But also, you're gonna have to order a whole new chain of displays from a different supplier, or the same supplier is going to have to retrofit their display technologies. You're probably gonna end up having to get a different resolution for the iPad mini just so that it can have slightly thinner bezels. And this can be like that year we went from the 9.7-inch iPad Pro to the 10.5-inch iPad Pro. It was like a slight facelift on the front, but back then, that was like the coolest, most modern looking iPad available. Now we have things like the iPad Pro. Now we have things like the budget iPad Air 4. So when those things are in existence, yeah, Apple, we're going to ask you to bring that to the rest of the lineup. And the iPad mini was never really about being the cheapest. It was just about being the most portable and compact. So now you're just wanting to retain all of those old legacy features, still a physical home button, still the big forehead and chin, still the traditional design language, probably even still the headphone jack if you're looking for some silver lining around here. But knowing it's Apple, maybe we should say this space gray lining. Either way, this makes the iPad mini 6 a whole lot less appealing to me, and Mac Takara did not talk about the chip they plan on incorporating in it, but given the iPad mini is still rocking an A12 chip, I would not be shocked if they decided to upgrade it a bit to an A14. You know, that's what they put in the iPad Air, and apparently that didn't cost them too much, so maybe bringing that to a more affordable iPad, I guess it's good in some ways, but I don't know how much that chip can truly be appreciated. When a display is that small, you're definitely not going to be using it with a keyboard. Hardly anyone's going to be using it with a mouse. So in those situations, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, A14 chip matters that much. I'd be very surprised if they kept around the A12 chip another year, or just threw in the A13 and called it a day, you know, put something in the middle. I doubt Apple would end up doing that, but probably whatever chip they're planning on putting in the budget iPad 9 coming later this year, they'll likely end up putting in the iPad mini 6. But yeah, this definitely bums me out because the iPad mini is not the type of iPad to get too much love or too much attention. So this is the first time the iPad mini display is actually getting larger physically, and we're actually gonna see a facelift of some kind, but it's still going to look somewhat traditional, and Apple's probably not gonna update it again for another year to 2 years. Knowing Apple, it could be another 3 years, because with the iPad mini lineup, they really don't care if they don't touch it for like years at a time. So that's why I'm more bummed out about this one than usual, because, you know, if an iPhone is boring or an Apple Watch has a boring upgrade, we always know it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe next year. Well, maybe next year they'll update it. Or with Apple Silicon, it's like, oh, well, okay, we didn't get the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the Apple Silicon I wanted, but it's probably a year away. But with the iPad mini, if the next change doesn't have something you're really interested in, it's most likely going to stay that way for at least 2 to 3 years. So that's why I guess I'm more bummed out, because it means that we're likely not going to see an updated or futuristic iPad mini like the one I talked about for many years to come, unless, of course, Mac Takara is wrong. I really am hoping that here, because of course there were reports earlier last year that they were working on, you know, mini LED iPad mini and more bezel-less design trend, and keeping Touch ID is fine, just put it in the side button, don't put it in a home button. Especially with the way iPadOS is designed now, it feels like you don't even have to use the home button, so having a big chin and forehead so that there's a clickable button there just I don't get Apple's decision here, honestly. I would almost rather them just do nothing with the iPad mini. Just keep the same one from 2019. Just leave it on the store, maybe even discount it if you want to. And then all of this money you're spending on upgrading the display or slimming down the bezels or throwing the A14 chip in there, all of that money, just push it towards the next refresh when you can actually give it the bezel-less treatment and you could give it USB-C or make it look like an iPad Pro but just smaller and more comfortable to hold. I would much rather you just wait, even if it takes longer, even if it takes you an extra 6 months to a year. I would rather Apple do that than do these little mid-tier, like, uninteresting upgrades, which is what it sounds like. And yeah, I might end up picking one up just for the fun of it, but either way, definitely a big disappointment if you were expecting the iPad Mini 6 to actually be interesting. Now it sounds like a pretty S year overall, and at the same time, probably the biggest upgrade the iPad Mini has ever got, because it's always been a 7.9-inch display. It's never changed from that. This is the first time it's changing. So, anywho, let me know if you guys are still excited for the iPad Mini 6, or are you as disappointed as I am? Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.